Well, hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Williams, Senior Editor at MGMA and host of the MGMA Podcast Network. Today, we have another MGMA Member Spotlight episode. We love these episodes, and it gives us an opportunity to get to know you, the MGMA members. Today, we get to know another MGMA member, Tawnya Capps. Now, Tawnya is Practice Administrator at Colorado Cardiovascular Surgical Associates. Tawnya has nearly 30 years working across all types of roles in operations, clinical support, billing, HR, practice leadership, you name it. If there's a role in the practice, Tawnya has probably filled that at some point during her career. I also want to add that she has been a great partner with MGMA. She has her CMPE, she's an ACMPE fellow, and has served in several leadership positions with Colorado MGMA as well. So with all that said, Tawnya, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate all those accolades.
Well, they're yours and they are earned by
That's right.
you.
It's nice to hear someone else say it.
Exactly. Now, this is fun always. I love the energy when we have somebody in studio with
Right.
us. We were trying to locate you, and you happened to be like a building or two over.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I wasn't too far.
Yeah.
I found it.
That worked out really well, and we were talking for our listeners out there. We're in what we call the Denver Tech Center area. It's where the MGMA office is. That's where our studio is. You're over in the Parker area. I believe that's where you call home, correct?
Yes. I live in Parker. I've lived there for about 5 years. Before that, I lived kind of all over the place with my kids being in school. And but we have 8 different locations for our practices. So unfortunately, not one in Parker. But that's okay.
Is there one main location you go to, or do you spread it out and go to all 8
No, we have our
of
main
them?
office is located basically across the street from Swedish Hospital in Inglewood.
Okay.
And then we have some satellite offices on other hospital campuses. So fortunately, that's my main office location. I don't have to travel too much because we don't have full-time staff at the other locations. So it's kind of like a hoteling situation. We're there one day a week, so I don't have to go there the other locations very often. And I also have the opportunity to work from home.
Oh,
which
good.
is nice, yeah.
How do you balance that out? Because I've mentioned this on the podcast before at MGMA. We go in Tuesday, Thursdays in office. We can go in all 5 days if we want to,
Sure.
but we're supposed to go in Tuesday, Thursday, then Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We work remotely or sometimes on the road, wherever we may be.
Right.
What
That's
about
nice.
yourself? How's yours set up?
I kind of play it by ear. I dedicate Monday and Wednesday. Monday because there's always fires to put out, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And Wednesday we have a full clinic day at that location. But I think it's very important to have a presence for the staff. For multiple reasons. I have a great staff that is very has a lot of autonomy, very independent workers, which is to my benefit. But I like to have a presence, but I often end up going in more than I plan.
Yes.
So Monday, Wednesday are my set days, but sometimes it just ends up being whatever's needed.
Right. One of the questions I love asking guests, particularly our Member Spotlight folks who are MGMA members, is why healthcare? What got you into healthcare in the first place? A little bit about that origin story, if you want to share that.
I always my degree was in kinesiology, and I really wanted to get into sports medicine. But back then, it wasn't, it was many years ago, not 1800s or anything. I wasn't sure what program I wanted to get into. I thought about going to physical therapy or PA school. So I graduated and took some time off, and knew I wanted to be in the medical field somehow. So I got a job at a front desk at an ophthalmology group, and was going to just decide, what I wanted to do career-wise. And ended up going down the path of getting married, having kids. Shortly after the ophthalmology group, I moved to the practice I'm at now, starting at the front desk. And I just kind of always wanted to be in the medical field, so that's kind of how I started. And then, of course, as you mentioned, I've been at the same practice now for 30 years.
Yeah, well, you mentioned kinesiology. You mentioned an early interest in sports medicine. Are you an athlete? Did you play sports that got you interested in that?
Yeah, definitely. I was definitely an athlete growing up. I played softball, competitive softball, and volleyball in high school, and I also played lacrosse. Played 1 year lacrosse at DU. But that was before it was like Division I or whatever they are now. So I and their women's program wasn't as big then when I went to DU. And then when I transferred to CU, I didn't continue that. But yeah, I've always been involved in sports my whole life. So
that is so cool. Yeah, you're too humble. I mean, the fact that you played that, it doesn't matter what level. It's just really cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
So do you stay involved in sports either through kids or through just being here in Denver and watching the Broncos or anything else? Or
I mean, I like sports, following sports on TV. I'm not a fanatic about it. Oddly enough, another interest I had growing up was music.
Okay.
And so my kids, I started them piano lessons when they were 4 and 5. And so they went the music route. And so I was a marching band mom and, instead of a soccer mom or something like that. So they were, very successful with music. So the sports kind of went away and focus more on the music with my kids, and so not too much into sports. I tried to go back to softball last year in a Parker League, and that was very humbling because it was don't have like I thought I did. So anyway, I tried that, and that ended after one summer. So
I did the same thing at MGMA. We have a volleyball league. It's a co-ed drinking volleyball league, and hadn't played volleyball before, but played other sports. Got out there like I was running through a brick wall, and really just ran through my wrist injured, shoulder, knee.
I pulled a hamstring. I pulled a hamstring, and it was not. I was like, I wanted to do this just to get out in the summer.
Right.
Be outside, drink some beer, whatever. And it was not pretty.
No, those competitive juices get going, and I was like going to physical therapy in between matches. And I'm going, this is not working out.
Exactly.
No,
we tried.
Exactly.
So that's all that matters.
Well, that is so cool to connect with you on that. Yeah. I want to go into your career. So we talked about you wearing lots of different hats, being in lots of different roles over the years. When you were first starting out, did you have things carved out? Did you have a dream board or anything? What did that look like?
Sure. No, I didn't have any of that. I went in at the front desk and, again, just trying to have a career of some sort. Really had no anticipation of going the direction I was going. And actually, a funny story I like to tell is the billing gal came to me one day and was like, "Hey, we need a little extra help with paper super bills at the time." I'm aging myself, and to see if I could help with some ICD-9 coding and coding out the doctor's diagnosis. And so I met her the next morning, and I literally said to her, "Okay, give me the short version. I don't plan on doing this for a living." And 30 years later, I'm a certified coder still. And, so I think that kind of gives you an idea of kind of the stepping stones that I ended up taking. I just saw a lot of opportunity. I liked learning the new stuff. I think the coding is super interesting. Having my anatomy background really helped a lot. A lot of it made sense. I think so that became very natural. The certification was pretty easy, mostly because of my background and the anatomy. And so then I just started getting other opportunities, and I just took them. Went into surgery scheduling. And at one point I was billing manager. At one point I was HR manager, and so it continued to grow. I didn't have any of that played out. It just kind of happened.
Yeah. Yeah, that is such a cool story. I want to follow up again towards that beginning of the career. So if you had a time machine, you might do a lot more things other than, you might go just invest in the stock market, which is what I'd probably do. But, if you had a time machine, you could go back to yourself, 30 years ago. What's a piece of advice you'd give yourself?
I think if I probably very simply, and it doesn't really apply to necessarily my job, but I really just tell myself you'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think that when you're in your early 20s, I always remember thinking, gosh, what is it going to look like in 30 years for me, 40? What is it when I'm 50? What am I going to be doing? Because really at that time I had no idea. if I go back to school and I didn't have kids at the time, am I going to have kids? All that stuff. And I think with the ups and downs I've now experienced in life and being at my age, I think I would just tell myself, it's going to be okay. You'll be okay. Yeah. So just go with the flow and you're going to turn out fine. And I think that, would be good advice, because we all go through periods in life where, are we going to be okay? Am I going to get through this? And so that's definitely what I tell myself. I've been through a lot of things where,
For sure.
You wonder, am I going to make it through this? So, yeah, I definitely tell myself, hang in there.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Would you tell me the same thing?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but I love that. And we were talking about kids earlier, and I've got a senior in college who's about to graduate. Okay. So you just you experience those things. You try to place yourself, okay, when I was there, and
for sure.
Because you want to say, because, you and I, we've had life experiences. We've worked through different challenges, friction points. And, sometimes when you see that teenager, that kid in the young 20s, and it's like everything is earth-shattering, and you want to say calm down, but you go well, I'm not in those shoes right now, and so it's hard to get them there, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm fortunate enough to have amazing kids, so I didn't have a whole bunch of struggles. Definitely, it wasn't smooth sailing the whole time. I think that you definitely have to step back and understand the world is different from when we were that age, and I was able to communicate with them well and just kind of say things are different now. I know that one of my pet peeves, I guess if you could say, is people saying, this generation is glued to their phones. And I'm like, well, if we had phones, we might have been glued to it too, but we just didn't have them, So yeah, things have definitely changed, but it's hard to navigate through those times. So,
For sure. So next question then. I talked about it earlier that you have worn a lot of the different hats in a practice. How has that shaped you now? Because you get this better macro view of everything that could be going on. So talk about that.
Yes. I think that's why I'm so successful as I am, because I have done every single position, and I can understand, I can have empathy, I can communicate with the employees. I always tell my employees that, if you have any ideas how this could be better, please tell me. I'm not against change. I did the position, but it doesn't mean it has to be done that way. I'm still very active in training people in the positions, and so I still am completely aware of how each position is ran. I'll cover vacations, things like that. And it's mostly to keep myself on top of how things are running. If I based it on what surgery scheduling was like when I was doing surgery scheduling 20-some years ago, it would be totally off base, because authorizations were a lot different back then. Everything, was a lot different. I also tell people when I'm interviewing them, and it's something I am proud of, and I tell people I'm interviewing, just to let you know, I've done every position in this practice. And so I consider myself a team member, rather, we're all on the same playing field. And so I insert myself, I've had managers who couldn't answer the phone if they tried, type thing. But I'll go up there and, if they're busy, I'll check in a patient kind of thing. And then I also, consider I don't ever say boss.
Okay.
I don't ever call myself a boss. I think that keeps me, like I said, on the level playing field with my employees, and I think that goes really far. But understanding that all those different positions also helps in the operations part, of course. I can understand, how to make things, as things change. For example, the transition onto an EMR, when we did that from paper, being able to understand what that position is going to go through, having to transition, like front desk, checking in patients. I think that really helps me make a lot of decisions and have a successful practice.
Yeah. Talk about this then. When you, in a leadership role, step in, when you see there's a gap and you need to check somebody in, how does that build camaraderie, belief in the system, say like, wow, Tanya's not too big time here to step right in and do whatever the role is. Talk about how that really embodies the kind of culture y'all want to have there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's twofold. One is I'm trying to run a business and a practice. I'm going to get it done if it needs to get done, right? And I do think it goes a long way with the employees. for example, if somebody steps away to go to the restroom at the front desk and somebody's checking in, I'm going to check them in, and I'm also not going to get upset that the employee had to go to the restroom, and that kind of thing. And I do see a lot of my employees nowadays really being more motivated to do well because of the culture that we've built with that, that mindset that we're all on an even, like I said, even playing field. I've learned a long time ago that front desk is just as important as an MA, just as important as billing. Everyone is just as important, no matter the hierarchy, how long they've been there, or how much they get paid, or anything like that. So I make sure everyone is aware that everyone's on a level playing field. Nobody gets favors.
That is so cool. Yeah. What was the point when, say, you were at the front desk, or you were in a different role, and then all of a sudden you went, hey, I want to move into leadership. I want to move into management of some type. Was it a light bulb moment? Was it just progressive over time?
It was definitely not a light bulb moment. I was given the opportunity to become the practice administrator a little earlier than I became the practice administrator because we had one administrator leave, and they offered me the position. But at that time, I chose to be a mom. I wanted to be able to, volunteer and, be present with my kids. I was able to work from home a little bit and just be, able to go to their classrooms for, all that stuff, be able to drop them off, pick them up. And the current position I was in allowed that. And I wasn't sure what the management role would entail. And I do feel that me waiting on that was a good decision. I learned a lot more as time went on, primarily because I ended up pulling a lot of weight with the next manager and learned a lot of the ins and outs of, presenting numbers to the doctors and things like that. And so when they offered me the position again, I was able to say, I'm ready for that now. I do think their initial offer made me think about it and go, oh, wow, that's an opportunity for me. Am I qualified? Can I do this? And so I think that, I definitely absorbed a lot more and got involved in a lot more of the financials and operations part before I actually took the role. So it just happened, It wasn't a light bulb moment, but it was definitely when they finally offered it to me, it was like, I think I was ready for it then.
Yeah. You began your career in the 1990s, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I always joke. I tell people I've been there for 30 years, and I'm like, I started when I was 10.
That's right. I love that. From your perspective, then, what's similar, what's different for women in leadership roles with opportunities to move up? How has that shifted over the past 30 years or so?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's been a huge shift, especially in leadership roles for women. When I first started in the medical field, I felt it was, very heavy. Women were in billing positions, front desk positions, that kind of thing. And those roles were very, mostly made up of women. And I kind of felt like maybe that was the extent of it. Right. I didn't really see a whole lot of women in C-suites and leadership roles. And so I think it's definitely evolved. And then when I started getting involved in MGMA, which was about 2013, then I started really seeing a lot more leadership by women. And that really motivated me to say, hey, you know what? I want to do that and be a strong woman in leadership.
For women who maybe don't see themselves as leaders at this point in their career, what guidance would you give them based on your own experience?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that I would instill is networking, getting to know people. I think that's, a lot of what MGMA has done for me is just meeting people. One, you learn that you're going through the same problems and issues that other people are going through. And two, you learn a lot from other people, and whether the path they took or, you learn a lot from, talking to strangers for 20 minutes at a lunch or something, and education. I think that you can't ever stop learning. I'm a sponge, and I'll just, read anything or watch anything. And I, try to go as many conferences because you learn and network, and just keep educating yourself, because I think that the medical field is always evolving and changing, and just keep educating yourself, and you'll you can obtain those leadership roles.
Yeah. Something that I've observed anecdotally, and I've seen studies on it, women are more equipped in a networking environment. They make friends easier than men do. I'm like looking at my wife, and she's in these golf leagues, and has all these golf friends, and I'm just sitting here cuddled with the dogs watching an old movie.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But talk about that and how that can really help women, particularly even when you get into hybrid situations. It can make loneliness or feeling alone in the workplace even more pronounced, and how women maybe, I don't want to ask a leading question, but if you've seen this or push back if I'm wrong on it.
Yeah, no, I often say I'm the most extroverted introvert there is, because and I think that, being a part of MGMA and other groups and organizations and going out there and going to conferences, you ask me and I sit there, oh no, I'd rather stay at my house and sit on my couch and then go out in social situations. It sounds awful. People, oh, let's go to a party. I'm like, that's like the last thing I want to do. But then I get to a conference and I'm chatty Cathy out there and meeting people and talking at tables. And I think that it becomes kind of innate when you're in a situation with people, surrounded by people, and you realize that, one, you might have something in common, but it's just nice to start up a conversation. And, and the conversations often take themselves on. You can tell when a conversation is not going to go anywhere, or the person's not interested, and kind of thing. But oftentimes you end up having, a great conversation with somebody that you didn't know 10, 20 minutes before. And I do think that's a natural thing for women to as they say, it takes a village type thing, where, and we women have so much in common in so many ways. I think it's very easy sometimes to start up a conversation with a complete stranger.
Yeah.
Get a bunch of women together and we'll have a good old time.
Well, I hear this from my wife. She'll come back after a group gathering and has all these insights from women she's barely known. And I'm going, I have friends for like 20 years. I don't know any of these. The guys just don't talk about this
totally
stuff.
Different ball of wax. Yeah, totally, definitely.
Talk about the environment at a face-to-face event. You just said you just get wound up and you're just chatting away. And what is it like? What do you think is that impetus or whatever it might be at a face-to-face event where you can really connect with people and find that you have this shared experience, whether it's work-life balance as a maybe a leader, also a mom, or what, or maybe taking care of elderly parents or grandparents, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that knowing that you're in a, if you're in a massive room or like, a lecture or something, that you obviously are there and have something in common with these people, and you realize that, they have the same struggles, or they have different struggles, but we're all human, and we all have our day-to-day stuff, and whether it be home life, kids, taking care of parents, that kind of thing. And I think that it really motivates you to say, I'm here with all these, we're all here for like reason. And so I think that motivates you to kind of just want to reach out and talk to people. Like I said, I find myself oftentimes, avoiding eye contact. But for some reason, when you're at a conference, it's so easy to turn the person, left to the left of you and just start a conversation. One of my favorite things at conferences when they have table talk, and you turn to the table and you all start talking, and you have, sometimes they don't give us enough time because we all have something to say, and it's just so refreshing because you hear that, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're having that problem, and then you start, how did you fix it, and then you exchange business cards, and next thing you know, you're emailing each other about other problems, and so I think that being in a room full of people that you have some sort of commonality with, that doesn't have to be MGMA or medical, if you're into something, and if you're into photography and you go to a photography conference, and all those people are there for the same reason, and it just gives you that one thing that you have similar to somebody else, and it's a good talking point to start with.
You make such great points, because full disclosure, I've kind of quit reading the news, but when you read the news, it will focus so much on our differences, the decisiveness
true.
that we have. But when you have an opportunity to just sit down with someone one-on-one, I mean, we're human beings and we're, going through so many, our experiences, the way we got there might be different. But when you just hear, well, I'm just trying to pay my mortgage, I'm trying to do good at my job, I'm trying to raise a kid, I'm trying to take care of a ailing parent, we can connect in so many ways if we want to just are open to that and want to look for that.
Right. I love the saying is you don't know what the other person's going through, right?
You don't.
Somebody, is having a bad day. You don't know what they're going through. And I think that, having a connection to start off a conversation, you realize that you have more than something to talk about. And you also have differences.
Yeah.
But like you said, don't judge a book by its cover. You can't assume, what that does.
I know. I know. Let's move in another direction. Your relationship with MGMA. I love hearing that story from all of our guests. Like, how did it happen? What was your kind of entree into MGMA?
Yeah. When I took the manager role at my practice, the lady that was leaving the position said I should join MGMA and the local chapter just for mostly education. She said there's a lot of, good information on the website kind of thing. So I joined and just took it from there and had the opportunity to go to a conference, a national conference, and loved that. And I got involved locally with some conferences. And then I got approached by a person who I kind of considered a mentor. She had been in the industry for a long time and asked me if I would join the board, which I took as a huge compliment. And that really kickstarted things for me, being part of the Colorado chapter. So it's been, I think, in my 10th year or so being on the board in different roles, which I've enjoyed, of course, and just learning or realizing the benefit of being a part of this organization. And again, the networking and the education is endless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I keep coming back to it, but it is that sense of community, whether it's at MGMA or it's somewhere else, but just so you don't feel alone. I've talked to a lot of people, especially since we've gone hybrid, remote, different things like that. It's like, is anybody else going through what I'm going through, And then you do get in, whether it's a group, an organization, at an event, and you just hear these shared experiences, and you go, wow, I feel seen,
That is the number one thing I tell people all the time. I said, I remember hearing somebody else struggling hiring MAs or keeping, good employees, and I think we all have similar struggles, and just it goes so far knowing that we all are in it together.
Yeah, for sure. You not only have joined MGMA, served on the board for Colorado MGMA, but you've gone on, as I mentioned earlier, got that CMPE, later your ACMPE fellowship. How has that helped you grow in confidence, grow in knowledge, grow in just, I can do anything that they put in front of me?
Yeah, those are definitely the right words to say, because I wasn't really looking at it, and then a gal on the board with me at Colorado, she said you should, she said you should go for your CMPE, and so I kind of started looking at it and wasn't sure what it entailed. And the thing she said to me that stuck with me, and then I tell people all the time, is that it's what you do day in and day out.
Yeah.
I was like, what do I study? And I say back then there wasn't as much, I had to buy books, not so much on the internet anymore, or at the time for studying, that kind of thing. And she just kept telling me, it's what you do day in and day out. And, and of course, it's a little bit more than that. But so I just signed up for it and went for it. And fortunately, I passed, the first time around. So that definitely gave me some confidence that, oh, okay, maybe I do know what I'm doing. I do know what I'm talking about here. And sometimes it's very hard to do that reflection, that self-reflection, because I sit there and go, oh, wait a minute, I've been running a practice, a successful private practice for many, many years, so I'm doing something right. And so I'm very competitive, especially with myself, and so the fellowship just seemed like the next natural step. And so I did do the business plan before the concept had changed a little bit, and that was very motivating as well because I was very proud of that. But that business plan, I sent it to my brother to read, and he said, "There's people out there that pay thousands of dollars to get a business plan like that."
Right.
And I have a lot of respect for him, so that was a huge compliment. But yeah, I mean, it really makes you do some self-reflection, realize that, hey, I'm doing pretty good here, and I have a wealth of knowledge. I'm very proud of the fellowship.
Yeah. Last question. I want to bring it back home literally to your family. You've said that it's really important that you're a role model to your daughters. How is having that family, having their support, but also them leaning on you and looking to you as a leader and as a mom, and what has that meant to your career?
Oh gosh, everything. My kids are my number one biggest motivator, and they're my biggest supporters. They're my biggest fans. And when I got my fellowship or my CMPE, I was so proud to tell them, and they were so proud of me. And everything has always been. We just always been very close. I became a single mom when they were very young, and I wanted to make sure that they saw me as a strong role model.
Yeah.
And so having my successes over the years has really been important to me, so they can see me get through a lot of the trials and tribulations, but also coming out ahead and in life and being successful and a successful leader. I have a plaque in my house that says, "This house only raises strong women." And I'm happy to say that my two daughters are they're graduated from college and out in the real world successfully. And so I think, full circle that, but yeah, they're my biggest motivation and my biggest fan. So
This isn't fair. You're almost making me tear up here, Tawnya. So
exactly.
Stop this now.
Trust me. That took a lot to not.
I have a daughter, and it's, it hits right in the heart space. So I love hearing that from you. So I will just say, Tawnya Capps, thank you so much for joining us in the MGMA Member Spotlight.
I appreciate being here, and you made it very fun and comfortable, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. So, everyone, I just want to put this out to you. If you're an MGMA member, reach out to us. Go to our Instagram account, ping that account, let them know you want to be in the MGMA Member Spotlight as well. And I'm going to put some additional resources in our episode show notes. So until then, thank you all for being MGMA podcast listeners.